everybody sees a listing go live, but they don't understand what went on behind the scenes before then to make the listing actually sell.
So today we're going to walk you through what actually happens from our side of the transaction when we're working with clients getting ready to list their homes. So the pre-listing phase. Danielle, what do you do when it comes to the pre-listing phase?
A lot of due diligence on the side of information, but also, you want to take the seller's opinion into account as well. So for me, for the pre-listing, I want to know, first off, do you want to sell or do you have to sell? And how urgently do you have to sell? Like, or is this like, it could be up for 7 months and I'm fine, or 1 or 2 months I want it to sell by. And then I think it's, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, sometimes I ask, like, what's more important to you, time or money? And obviously money is very important, but if it's a timing component, like you have to sell your house before you buy the next one, or you're moving out of state for a job and you're not gonna have time to deal with it, then that strategy is going to look a lot different than something like, oh, I don't have to sell, I just kind of want to sometime in the next year. Two totally very different strategies.
Yeah, and then I'm also pooling comps. I'm pooling comps that have sold in the last 3 months. And the market is continuously changing right now, especially in the Phoenix market. So I don't like to go back beyond 3 months because it could be a totally different market then. So I just want to go 90 days. And then on top of that, I want to go what is listed right now and how long has it been listed, because that's our competition. If we're trying to list something for $700,000, I want to know all the homes from $650 to $750 in our range to see like what people are also looking at, and make sure that we're aligned with that. Now, we don't have to be the cheapest, but if you tell me, Danielle, I need to sell my home in 60 days, then we probably want to be pretty close to the cheapest, because something sellers aren't wrapping their head around right now is average days on market in Phoenix are over 3 months. So, and a lot of times it's 5, 6, 7 months. So if you tell me I'm not urgently selling, but I want to sell in 60 days in this market, that's urgently selling.
Yeah. And it's all relative. So that's a really good, unique perspective on your market, because ours is slightly different. Not that one's better or worse than each other, but if our average time on market is like 3 weeks or something, and people are like, why isn't anything happening? It's a function of price, or it's a function of where you're priced at. So, it's interesting when you go to list. Let's say you and your agent talk about a price point, 2 months before you go to list. You better be re-looking at the MLS like the day before you list to make sure that that price is still accurate, that you're priced within. And let's say there's a house listed at $425 and yours is going to compete with that. Well, maybe you want to price at $420 then, or $415, like just to be differentiating from your competition within the market. So all things to think about in the pre-listing phase before you even go live on the market.
Yeah, and something else too in our market, this could be very different in yours, but nobody is getting full price for their home unless you're, listing it at a very low price where, you want to get it under contract right away. Nobody's getting full asking. So if you tell me, Danielle, the least I want to take for my home is $475,000, then we should not list it for $475,000. Now, of course, we have to look at comps and everything, but just to be candid, I mean, if your bottom point is $475,000, we should be at least $490,000. Because between, the offer and then the concessions or whatever people want after the inspection, if you have to walk out with a certain amount of money, you just have to keep that in mind in our market, that listing it for a certain price, you are probably not going to get that exact price. And then you set yourself up for failure because, people see your house, it's listed at $475,000, they offer you $465,000, which in our market is a good offer because you're pretty close to where you're at. And I have to tell them, no, they won't move not even $1. Then that frustrates the buyer. And then they're like, you know what, this person's unreasonable and I'm going to move on to somebody else. So you really just have to have that strategy too. You just don't want to list it at the price you have to have.
Yeah. And you don't want to overshoot either because then you won't get showing. So it's finding that happy medium that's relative to your market.
Well, and sometimes I look at it differently too, where say a seller's like, I want to list my house for $500,000. And I'm like, $470,000 is what the comps are at, you know? I will do 500, but they have to understand if in 2 weeks we've had no showings and they need to sell it. Now, if they don't care if they sell it or not, it's a different matter. But if they need to sell it, then we need to lower it down quicker and not slower. Because if we wait a month, now we've been on the market for 30 days, less people are looking at the listing. And so if we lower it then, it's not as impactful. So you really have to pay attention that what happens in that first 10 to 14 days, because you should be getting showings as long as you're not in a super high price points are different. But if you're just in a basic price point for your area and you're not getting showings, you are priced too high. If you're getting showings and nobody's making an offer, then you have to look at, you know, how the house is staged and different things of why people aren't making an offer if they're coming to see it. But I always tell my sellers, like, if nobody's coming through the door, it is not going to sell.
And amen to that. It's so true. So you have to be aware of all of that. And, you know, on that note, when you walk through a property as a realtor advising your clients, you know, typically when we have that listing meeting, they'll say like, okay, well, what I was thinking about doing this in this room and this in that room. And I say, hold on, pause, hit the pause button. Let's walk through the whole property first. Let's look at everything holistically, like as a whole. And then let's identify those top couple of things that are going to give you the most bang for your buck. They might not cost a lot or they cost a little bit, but your ROI on that improvement or on that repair is going to help sell that house faster and for more money. So really, you know, repairs versus upgrades, kind of balancing what that looks like and talking about what actually matters versus what doesn't matter.
Yeah, and a lot of times, you know, sellers want to do that. They're like, you know, it's like so funny to me because they've like dealt with their old fixtures and their carpet forever. And they're like, I'm going to rip out my carpet and put in new carpet. And I'm going to rip out my fixtures and put in new fixtures. And I'm going to do, and it's like, don't do any of like, because you might rip out your silver fixtures and put in gold fixtures because that's in right now. And then the seller or the buyer walks through and they're like, oh God, I hate those gold fixtures. I want black fixtures. So I got to add that to my expense bucket. Or you rip out old carpet and you put down brand spanking new carpet and the buyer walks in and they're like, oh, I hate carpet. I'm going to rip this up. So you're putting in all this money and it's not helping to sell the house. The buyer's still like, oh, I need to. Now, if you're going to do a total flip on your house, that's completely different. But if you're just going to update little things here and there, that might not be what your buyer even wants done. So you're better off to fix things that matter, you know, like you're better off to fix things that, like if you, like I had a seller and they had a bunch of water stains everywhere because they had a roof leak. Like you want to paint that, you know, you want to do stuff where that's, you know, gonna make the property look nicer to everybody, not just one person. And I think that can be really impactful. If you have a room and you have it painted pink for your daughter, painting that room white, that's going to really help. Like there's certain things, but man, people get so crazy about everything and it doesn't really help the sale price.
Correct. And I think, you know, it's one thing if you have a light fixture and one of the, you know, bulb receptacles is broken and it doesn't work. Okay, replace that. Because otherwise a buyer could say, oh, I think there's electrical issues going on. It's like, no, it's just a bad bulb socket, but just, you know, replace it with something not crazy price. Same with carpet. Like if the carpet is absolutely like nasty and atrocious, okay, like replace it so that is not the only thing that draws people's attention. But if it's okay, average condition, whatever, leave it. You know, let the next person deal with it or make their offer accordingly. Unless, like you said, it's nasty, gross, like pet stains, human stains, whatever. Okay, then it's probably worth it to replace it, even if it's an entry-level carpet, just to make it feel cleaner and more taken care of.
Absolutely. And I think that's a good basis. Like if everybody on the planet would agree this is a good upgrade and there's no nuance of opinion, then you should do it. You know, like if you have like you said, something broken or something stained or something that's totally nasty, like, fix that. Those are things you want to fix. But these little cosmetic things, because you think this is dated or you think that this could look nicer, like you're kind of throwing your money down the drain because it's not going to increase the purchase price. Like if you go from like decent carpet to brand new carpet, it's not going to increase the purchase price. If you know, have old sink fixtures and you put in new sink fixtures, that's not going to increase the purchase price, you know? So
Yeah.
People tend to waste money. And the other thing too is like full repairs versus partial repairs. So I had a roofer come out, the girl had a roof leak, and she's like, he wants to replace the whole roof, like a brand new roof. And I'm like, okay.
Oh,
and it was like 20 grand. I'm like, okay, but can he just do a partial repair to the roof? It's going to still have to pass an inspection, but can he partially repair it? She's like, well, I don't know. I didn't ask him. And she's like, can you partially repair it? And he could. And it was like 3 grand or something. And it passed the inspection. Yeah. The roof was fine. But the truth is, if you're owning a home, maybe you do want to replace the whole roof because you're like, I don't want this to happen again or what. But if you're selling your home, yes, a new roof does add value to the purchase. It does not add the same amount you're spending. So while it's helpful, like we have a new roof, it's like great. Maybe that entices more people. Maybe it makes them, ask another 5 grand or something, or, but they're not going to say, oh, you paid 20 grand. Well, now the house is worth 20 grand. So you're kind of throwing money down the toilet unless the roof's in such bad shape that it's not going to pass an inspection and you do need to replace it. But you just have to be careful just saying, I'll take a new water heater and I'll take a new roof and I'll take a new air conditioner, because those things, they can be repaired and they don't necessarily need to be replaced.
Yeah. The only time I would recommend a client replace their roof is if we have like very strong concerns of there's existing damage and we can't stop the leak, or insurance. Sometimes a home is literally uninsurable until something is replaced. Well, that's something that would affect every single buyer that has financing. Like, sure, somebody could come along and buy it with cash, but if they have to insure it, and literally no insurance company is going to insure a home with peeling, curling asphalt shingles that are blowing off in the lawn, it's like, yeah, we probably need to get that addressed.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing too is taking advice from your realtor when we tell you that something is going to be a problem. So for example, I had a client and we had water damage and we had moisture. And I said, we really should test for mold and we really should get this all fixed and squared away. Well, they didn't want to because they didn't feel like it was a problem. Well, then we got it under contract, and sure enough, why did it fall through? Because the client was concerned it had mold. And it did have mold. Now, the mold issue, because we ended up having to get it remediated now that we know there's a mold problem, was $2,500. So we could have saved a deal of $700,000 property for $2,500 because that would have already been taken care of and it wouldn't have flagged as a concern on the inspection. So you don't want to be, some people, you have 2 types of people. You have people that are like, I need to fix this and do this and look at this and rip up this. And then you have people that are like, I don't really want to do anything to this. I think it's fine. Yeah. It's never been a problem for me. Why would I get my HVAC looked at? It's never been a problem for me. Why would I get my roof looked at? Never had a leak that I know of. Well, and the problem with that is it's so cheap. Like my HVAC company, it's $100 for them to come look at the HVAC. My roofing guy, he'll come look at your roof for free. There's certain things, those are the 2 main ones, you want to have looked at, because guess what? If the inspector is not an HVAC person, so if he looks at it and it's not blowing the right way, then now the buyer gets to pick their HVAC company to come out and analyze your air conditioner. Yeah. Now, their incentive a lot of the time, because they don't know you, is the most money they can possibly get. So maybe they'll say, oh, you need a new HVAC, when your company would have been like, this is an $800 fix. You just have some coils that are rusted. Yep. It'll start blowing properly after this is, repaired. So, you kind of I know people don't like to spend money. Some people don't like to spend money preparing to sell their house, but that little bit of investment is worth the money because you're going to be giving it up later on. Like somebody is going to inspect that. You don't want to
trip over dollars to save dimes. Like I see it all the time. It's like, no, just spend this little bit amount of money at the front end and save a whole lot of headache on the back end. Because like in the case of your seller with the mold issue, if it went back on the market, then people are going to say what's wrong with it. And, the time on market is indicative of the property is good or not. So it's like, okay, where are we at? Let's just get it done. Let's get it, preventative maintenance and, doing things ahead of time oftentimes pays off. Especially when it comes to things like that.
Yeah. And you're going to have somebody doing an inspection on your property. Like that is happening, okay? Like if we get it under contract, they're doing an inspection, and inspectors are going to look at everything. So the more we can do to make that go nice and smoothly, the better. And I, and even for my properties I list personally, I mean, I always have my HVAC guy come out and look at the air conditioner. I always have a roofer come out looking at the roof, because there's two things. One, I can say, this is certified, I just had it checked. So then when the inspector's like, well, I don't know, this is a pretty older unit. Now I'm saying don't even worry about paying somebody to come out, because I already did that. And sometimes it makes it so the buyer doesn't even waste their money on somebody else. But then secondly is now I can argue, like your HVAC guy says we need a new unit. Well, guess what? Mine says this, and it gives you some leverage, because right now, you just list, you didn't clean up water damage, you didn't check your HVAC. The property's starting to look like it's a mess because buyers get jumpy. So they might back out over this, or they want all of this stuff fixed. And trust me, when you have contractors, they're more honest with you because you're their client. When a buyer brings in somebody to analyze something on a deal, the contractor knows that they're probably not paying for the repair. It's probably going to be on the seller, and they, like it or not, they're not as budget friendly and, as they would normally be a lot of the time.
Yeah. And it comes down to relationships too. Like if your HVAC guy, he's serviced your, HVAC for a long time, then he knows like, okay, this is common with this unit, or we did this already, so it might be this. And you save money in the long run, which is huge.
Yep. And it scares people less on the inspectors, because some inspectors, they will scare people. I've seen it. And they don't even necessarily know. Like I had a property I was selling. The inspector said that the pan needed to be replaced in the unit because it was rusted. Mm-hmm. But then I called my HVAC company. They're like, you can't replace the pan in that unit. So you literally would have to replace it's a pancake unit, and you'd have to replace the whole entire bottom part for $2,500 for a rusty pan. You know what I mean? And so, but they don't know, and luckily I was able to kind of figure that out. But that's the kind of stuff that comes up because inspectors don't always know. So if you're able to kind of mitigate some of the stuff that they're seeing, then you're going to have less issues later on. Yeah. And I think that's a big part of preparing to list.
100%. So how about like decluttering? What do you tell your clients when it comes to decluttering as part of the pre-list?
Get your shit out of here. No, just kidding. It depends on the client, like sometimes if you have closets that are filled to the gills, like you have like a closet in your master and your secondary bedroom, it makes it look like the closet is small and there's not enough storage in the house. Like that's what people think. And it could have a nice big closet. So I say, and I hate it too when you open the garage and there's just like crap all the way to the ceiling in the garage. Like that stuff does affect buyers. I think more so in the closets than in the garage. So if I had to pick, I would say move your stuff to the garage. But, if you can move your stuff to a friend's house, a family member, if we could just try to find a way to not have so much clutter in the home. Because sometimes too, like if you have like a teenage boy or something, like the room's smelly from all the clutter, like that kind of stuff really isn't great for showings.
Yeah. Obviously there's always going to be some homes that are magazine picture ready, like that look like to the nines. Everything's perfect. But for the most of us who actually live in our homes and, go to work and go home and not keep it like perfect, I always suggest clients start with like one box in each room. Like anything that's on your dresser, any clutter, like sometimes, photos, like you still have to be comfortable living there because you don't know how long your home is going to be on the market for. But one box in each room goes such a long way in like just fill a box, write the name of the room on there and, stack it in the garage or whatever. Just little things like that can go such a long way in first impressions and people walking through a property. Little stuff, big difference.
That's a really good idea. And I will say, as a seller, you are responsible for how your home looks. Like there's things that I can do, but I'm not at every showing. Like on an open house, I'm going to kind of try to get your home ready, but I'm not at every showing. So like if I have someone come over and they're like, the realtor will tell me like it was kind of nasty in there and the beds weren't made, and people can't look beyond that. Most people can't look beyond that. And if they do, they're like, this house is kind of a dump and I can get a good, I can offer a low offer on it. But I have sellers that will go the extra mile. and they'll
Yep.
light candles and they'll put bed, like little notes and stuff around the house and like really cute setups. And those
Yes.
houses tend to sell really quickly because the presentation is there, and the presentation does matter. Too. Although I do hate like Glade plugins and stuff. Like that is a huge pet peeve of mine. I am like, get the Glade plugins out of there. Like if I don't even really like candles, but if you want to light a candle with like a very light scent, I'm kind of okay with that. If you want to put on some music, that's fine. But like anything that's like highly scented makes it look like you're covering up a smell. And so just know that's what people think when they walk in.
Yeah, especially when it hits you like a wall, or it's exactly. What are you covering up? Does it smell in here, or is it just that? It's kind of hard to discern what that is. So, so true. And I
guess if you do have a really bad smell, that might be a good tactic that you can't get out. But I would first start with like an ozone.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Ozone is huge. And you can buy spray. You can buy little machines. They're like $80 on Amazon, or you can buy like ozone spray. Just make sure like your kids and pets and everything are out when you spray it, but definitely worth the money. Real quick, I was talking with an agent just last week, and there was this house listed in our market. It was decorated beautifully. Like everything was in its place. Everything had a place, just picture perfect. And the house was okay. Like it wasn't fantastic or anything, but it showed so well. The sellers had, a handful of offers to pick from. And the agent literally texted me, wow, that is the power of a cute house. And it's like, yeah, it's a cute house. It's nothing like crazy extravagant, but the staging helps, the cleanliness, like the level of clean it is. Huge difference. Worth every minute of doing that, or every penny to pay somebody to do it.
100%. And it really does matter, and I know for some people they're like, well, I just can't do that. I got like 4 kids and that's fine. Just try to make it as cute as you can, but just know that it does matter. You just have to know that it does matter when people walk in, especially too, if a home looks dirty. Like I think that's another thing too. Like if you have dishes, if you have dirty bathtubs, like the cleanliness of the house, say it's just not a cute house and that you don't have the money to make it cute, just at least keeping it very clean. Like people like to see a very clean house.
It makes you feel that it's been very well taken care of. If it's clean, that's associated with maintenance in people's heads, whether it's consciously or subconsciously. There is a connection there with the level of clean and the level of maintenance, I think.
I'll tell you this too, like surprisingly, because I'm not really like this, but I think because I'm less freaked out about issues, buyers very much care on how the property was taken care of by the previous owner. And what I mean by that is like I have a lot of buyers that don't want to buy something that has already been a rental because they perceive that as not well taken care of. They love it when it's owned by the same couple for a long period of time, And so sometimes if you have like really cheap repairs done, that can come back to haunt you too. Because especially with your guys that are buying that are more handier, this is where I kind of see it, where they're like, they replace the sink with a flexible line. Like that's a temporary, fix. What else are they doing in here that's like bottom of the barrel, cheap as they can do it? Now, I'm not saying you need to go out like primo, but just know if you get a handyman in there and you try to, before you list, and you try to do everything as cheap as you can, like with temporary fixes and like not, like the worst of the worst handyman work, that's going to potentially show up on the inspection. And that could be concerning to a client too.
Yeah, nope, that's a very good point. Very good point. So how about on the marketing and the social media side of things? Almost 100% of buyers start their search online. So what are you doing pre-list to prepare those sellers for that?
Well, I think pictures are the number one thing. I mean, I think you need good pictures. Bad pictures are awful. So you need to make sure that your photographer's good. You get good pictures. I've sent my photographer back out and been like, I don't like how this room looks. Like sometimes it goes great, sometimes it doesn't. But those photos are really important. And as a buyer, once again, you need to make sure that your place is picked up and very presentable for those photos. If it's a higher end listing, I'll do a listing video. I don't do it for every listing. I don't necessarily think you need it for every listing. A floor plan is always good. And the listing description is very important as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And in preparation for listing photos, I always tell clients, like, have your countertops completely empty. Even if you have like a baby and your baby bottle warmers on the counter, like that's fine for showings if it's neat. But for listing photos, like get everything completely empty. We want it to look as clean and crisp and sharp as possible. And then you can kind of live again. But listing photos are like 100% important because it's the first thing people see, and they're going to make their decision. Do I go and look at this property or not, based upon your social media and MLS pictures? So super important.
Yeah, and I even, switch out that front picture. Like say that something's been listed for a week and we're getting a couple showings, but not really what I want to get. Or say it's been listed for a month and so now we're hardly getting any showings. I'll start switching out that front picture because I do think it's almost like A/B testing like we do on YouTube. Like, okay, I thought the front of the house picture was the best one, but now let me try the kitchen because the kitchen's really nice, and just see who else you're pulling. Because a lot of times people, like on Zillow, they'll hover over it, and like that initial picture, if they don't click on it, is the only picture they'll ever see. And sometimes if they click on it and that picture opens, they don't necessarily scan to all the other pictures. So they might be like, oh, I hate the color of that house. I'm done. I don't want the house, right? But if you have a picture of the kitchen, they're like, I love that kitchen. I've been looking for that style the whole time. And now they're clicking through the pictures. So you don't want to just like sit it and forget it when it comes to marketing. You have to keep changing and A/B testing, changing the listing description, changing the pictures, trying different things, adding a video, trying different things to make it enticing for people.
I think it's so true. And even, I use social media more and more, and I notice that the types of posts that I get the most traction on are the carousel photos. So it's not like the just listed or just sold. Like, it's nice to see what's going on in the market. But for buyers, I get the most clicks on all of the pictures that I upload so somebody can kind of walk through the property. And I know that it's customary for many agents to only post the outside of the house first, and then you walk into the kitchen, and then you walk through. It's like, no, I like to post like one outside picture of the house just to get the gist of it, but then hit it. If you have an awesome backyard, have that be picture number 2. If you have a stellar kitchen that's kick ass, have that be picture number 3. It is nice to get a feel for it when you're walking through or clicking through the photos, but people won't get that far if they don't get their attention grabbed at the beginning.
Yeah, and that's the whole point. The whole point of everything that you do, whether it be the price, the pictures, the description, the marketing, listing it, is to get somebody in the door, because very rarely are you going to get a legitimate offer if they've never even been in the door. And that's why when you move to the next phase, the first 72 hours, and why it's so critical is because you can learn a lot in those 72 hours. Because like I said, if you posted a home and nobody's reaching out to you, no realtor's asking you any questions, nobody's booking a showing, that's not a good sign. And I'll say here, I'd extend it past 72 hours because our market's so much slower. But I'd say in the first week or 10 days, if you don't have a few showings, that's a problem.
Yep. I think it's huge. Our area, we're thinking like day 2, day 3, if we're not having, a couple or several showings, it's like either the price is high or we better get an offer out of these first couple showings. Otherwise, we're looking at potentially price reduction by week 2. And that's because we're in a seller's market big time right now. Like literally 9 out of the last 10 houses I've listed, multiple offers. And we're not listing them cheap either. Like, we're listing them for like a decent price that, is not underpricing, because I know some agents use that as a strategy, but no, like we try to price it correctly. And then if the market carries it higher, it has been, it's pretty wild.
No, and that's great. I mean, yeah, there's definitely a pricing discrepancy, between where you're at and where I'm at. And I think that's part of the issue. Where I'm at, it's just more expensive. It's harder with the cash flow. But I will say, like, sellers get cocky kind of at the beginning, because they'll say, oh, like our first week we had 3 showings. Like, we're doing so good. And I'm like, yeah, but when you first list a property, everybody that's really serious that has been waiting immediately sees that, saves it, and sends it to the realtor, and they come to look at it.
Yep.
you don't have that week after week after week. After that, you're relying on people giving you a second look, maybe a buyer that's not as serious considering to maybe go see it because maybe they want to buy, or somebody new coming to the market. But it's not the same as that first time. And that's why, sometimes with sellers where if you get an offer in a week, they're like, oh, I underpriced it. I should have priced it higher. It's like, no, you had one person that was interested in buying your home. And it's not the same, because sometimes if you price it even higher and that person doesn't show up, it's not like we had this whole line of people that wanted to buy it, And I think that means, to me, if you sell the home in 30 days in our market, all that means is it was priced correctly. Like, it doesn't mean it was a smoking deal. A bidding war, that kind of stuff is different. But to me, if you sell it in 30 days, that's great news. That does not mean you underpriced it.
Yeah. I have a seller like that right now. We listed a property and they got 2 offers like right out the gate within the first 3 days. And that seller is like, oh my God, we listed it too cheap. But I'm like, no, these are active buyers that are literally waiting for a notification from Zillow to pop up on their phone. And then they're coming to look at it. We reached the serious buyers and we priced accordingly to be able to get these offers, and they're over ask, which is more than what this seller even thought they were going to get in the first place. But just because offers came in, within the first week, they're like, oh my God, we priced it too cheap. And she's, is like devastated. And I'm like, oh my God, this is like great. Like, if you let these clients sit and you don't respond to their offers, they're going to go on to the next, and then you're going to be sitting.
Well, and that's what happened. So I had a client about 9 months ago, and it was a buyer. And they made a $2.5 million offer, which was a full price offer on a home cash. So I'm excited. I'm like, we got this in the bag. It just had listed the day before, sent it to the realtor, and I just wasn't hearing back. And I'm like, why am I not hearing back? Like, our offer expired. Like, I did the 24 hours and we're still waiting. And she calls me and she's like, he actually wants to raise the price. And I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? And she's like, just $250,000. And I'm like, you're kidding me. He's going to raise the price. And so I have to then go tell my buyers that the seller wants to raise the price. Well, of course, they're pissed. So they're like, we're done. No, we don't even want the house anymore, because it's emotional, whether people like to admit it or not. Well, guess what? That house 9 months later, it's still sitting there, and it's lower than the cash price offer that they had given him originally. And he has to be kicking himself. And, I don't know if that was an advice of the realtor or not, but I can tell you, just because you get an offer for full price cash the day you list does not mean your house is overpriced. That just means, you should have put a lot of thought into the price. And if that's the price you wanted, you should just be thanking your lucky stars that somebody was looking for that exact house and wants it.
Yeah. Exactly. Gosh, you're preaching to the choir.
I know.
You just said, I want to wrap it up and send it to my seller.
Well, I was so shocked. I've had that happen to me a couple of times. One personally to myself, and another time to this buyer, where you're sitting there offering a full price offer and it's like crickets on the other end. And you're like, hello, like, I still haven't heard back on the full price offer that I sent over. And it's like, they decided that they're increasing the price. And you're just like, what are you,
Yeah.
But it sucks, because when you offer a full price offer, you kind of assume it's just going to get accepted. So then when it doesn't, it's kind of a shock to you and to your clients. You kind of think, oh, I got this in the bag. Everybody's happy. Then it's like, no, we're not accepting it.
Yeah. Which it's like psych, like joke, where does it come from? I don't know. I don't know.
I know. And so once you start to get showings, so assume you're getting showings, and this is good. This means it's priced in a good realm. You're getting showings. You're just waiting for that offer. There's feedback that your realtor needs to be getting from the people touring the property.
Yep. And feedback is huge. I say any feedback is good. Even if it's negative, it tells us if there's a disconnect between the price and the quality or location or whatever of the home. If we're getting consistently good feedback but no showings, that's where it can be the most frustrating as a seller. It's like, oh, all of these buyers have said they liked the home. All of them said they felt it was priced right. Why aren't we getting any offers? And that's where things can get tricky. So
it can, but you have to take that advice. Sellers tend to get kind of offended by feedback, and some feedback is probably not pertinent to everybody, But some
Yeah.
feedback you really have to take into account that that's just how it is, whether, and sometimes you can change it and sometimes you can't. And that's the frustrating part, I think, for sellers is sometimes the feedback is like, this room seems too small. So then you can take out furniture and do things to make it bigger. But sometimes it's you're too close to a main road. It's too noisy. Well, what the hell do you do about that? There's nothing you can do about it. But it's still good feedback because what it might be saying is because of this negative thing, you might still be priced too high because people are going to another house that is not by a main road or another house that's not across the street from a high school or, whatever the negative feedback you're getting is.
Yeah.
And you might have to adjust your price. But it's good to know because at the end of the day, if it's the busy road, you at least know that the house itself, everyone thinks is great. It's just this external factor that you really can't do that much about that is the problem.
Yeah. It's a thing you can't change. Location.
Yeah.
So
yeah, low ceilings, I get,
yeah.
There's just things that you just fundamentally can't change about the house. So if we keep getting these same negative feedback and it's not selling, what the person is essentially telling you, if you read between the lines, for this price point, I don't want to be by a main road. For this price point, I don't want low ceilings. And you just have to absorb that because if it's continuous feedback. Now, if one person says it, maybe that's not the problem. But if you just keep getting that feedback, then I think you have to understand that it just is what it is.
Yeah, I think a great example of this is just sold a 4-bedroom house, had a great living room, a great family room, but the kitchen, I'm guessing that the basement was unfinished when it was built because the kitchen is just very small. They have a kitchen island. It fits 4 people, no more, no less, like just 4. Well, with a 4-bedroom house, if people have kids, let's say they have, 3 or 4 kids, that's 6 people that they want to have supper together, but that kitchen only has room for 4. So you have this big house with lots of bedrooms and great family space, but a tiny ass kitchen. It's not going to work for most buyers who have their, priorities saved for, I want a 4-bedroom, 2-bath, blah, blah. They go in and it's like, whoa, this kitchen's too small,
Yeah.
So that's things like that where maybe you could change that if you change the functionality or the layout, but things like location or, busy road or highway or whatever you can't change, so you have to change. The only thing you can change is the price.
The only thing you can change is the price at that point, and that just is what is true because somebody will buy the house. Maybe they won't mind being by a busy road if they're saving a certain amount of money. Maybe they don't care if they're across the street from a high school if they're saving a certain amount of money. Maybe they will do the remodel of the kitchen to make it bigger because they're saving a certain amount of money. But if there's another home that's over a few roads that has a big, nice kitchen or that has, that's in a cul-de-sac or, there's value to that. So your houses are not worth the same amount of money.
Yeah.
And then you just have to be honest. And so when you get to the offer stage, because that's what we're waiting for, like the offer.
Yep.
What are you looking for with the offer? Because, sellers want to just sometimes take the first offer that comes in the door, and that can or cannot be a good idea.
Yeah, or some sellers want to be like, oh, well, we're going to wait for other offers to see if anything comes in higher. And it's like, these are bona fide, pre-approved, ready to roll. They made an offer because they like it. So it's kind of the flip of a coin where for some sellers, the first offer is great and some sellers it's not. But what I talk to sellers about is the type of financing. Do we have any concerns with FHA or VA or USDA financing with the property itself? Is that buyer already pre-approved, or are they just, did they just print off a pre-approval online? How skilled is that agent? Have they done, some, I guess, vetting or preparing of the buyers with like what their payment would be, what insurance or taxes might be, kind of reading between the lines and doing that, all of the behind the scenes work that sellers don't always see or can't really fully appreciate that's being done behind the scenes. And then also like the deal structure. So maybe a buyer needs to request closing costs, so they increase their offer in order to build in some closing costs. It could be little things like that that make all of the difference in the world to make a deal work or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just think that you can't just take any offer, and you have to be honest with your seller on, I know you like this deal, but here are my concerns. I know you like this deal, but here's why I like this one better. Because you don't really want to go under contract. It depends. Like in the Phoenix market, if you're not getting any other offers and you finally get an offer and they're pre-approved, yeah, you're going to probably take it and just see how it goes, but you're not going to want to do that on day 2, because you might get another offer that's better on day 10.
Yeah. Well, and contrary to popular belief, the highest offer isn't always the best offer. I mean, that higher offer might have inspection contingency or home sale contingency or, XYZ fill in the blank, or it might be a financing type that's going to be a major hurdle for the type of property it is, where maybe the second highest offer, maybe it's $5,000 less, but there's no inspection and there's no home sale. Like take that and run, take it and run and be done,
Absolutely. And I would say too, is that have the conversation, at least in our market, what are we doing if this house doesn't appraise? So if somebody's putting down 15, 20%, 10%, I'm not worried about it. If they're putting down 3% or 5%, there's a chance the home's not going to appraise. And if it doesn't appraise, that's when everyone looks at each other like, so what are we doing? So let's have that conversation before. That way, as a seller, if this doesn't appraise, this is on me, or vice versa, because maybe what I want to do then as a seller before I accept this offer is get an independent appraisal before I take this offline and we go through an inspection period and my home's now been off the market for 18 days. Then it doesn't appraise. Then it falls through. Then now we're back to market. Like maybe I want to do some things on my end if it's going to be on me, or maybe I want to demand that for the buyer, it's got to be on them if it doesn't appraise. And so, and so those are conversations you have to have, because if you just take any fly by night offer, there can be issues with that. And to your point, it's never good for a house when it goes under contract and falls out, especially at the beginning, because at the beginning, it's off everybody's radar. Like every buyer assumes the house is sold. Like, it goes under contract. They're like, boom, unsave it. I don't care. Move on to the next one. And so when you come back to market, people don't even know you're back to market. And so you have to have these strategic things at the beginning, because if you're going to go under contract, you really want to make sure there's a very good chance after we get through this inspection that this thing's going to close.
For sure. And I think you hit the nail on the head when you say have those conversations ahead of time, because, most people don't know what an appraisal gap is and how it gets addressed. So literally that communication ahead of time can make all of the difference between keeping a deal in contract or having it fall out of escrow.
So let's talk about the biggest mistakes that sellers are making right now. Because I'm seeing them a lot in the Phoenix market, because we are in a buyer's market, and I'm seeing sellers pricing like we're still in 2021, 2022, and their home is sitting. And then by the time that they catch up to the reality and want to lower the price, they're basically just chasing down the market. They want to lower it $5,000 here and $5,000 there and $5,000 again. And, if they would have just priced it correctly at the beginning, they would have sold it for more. So I'm seeing this in this one neighborhood that I just bought in. So I bought my house for $515,000, and there's a house that started at $600,000 when the right price was closer to $550,000. It sat and it sat and it sat and it sat. Now it's at $539,000. One just listed for $550,000, went under contract in 2 days. One just listed for $525,000, went under contract in 3 days. This home now is still sitting, and they just delisted it yesterday. Now, what happened there? Well, they've been on the market for like 9 or 10 months at this period. You're not even on people's radar when they're searching. People are also seeing that you've been on the market, so they think there's something wrong with the house.
Exactly.
And so the best strategy for this seller is to delist and then come back to market as a new listing. Now, it's still going to show what they were at, but don't do this and come to market at the same price you were at before, $539. Come at $525 and get it wrapped up, put it under contract. However, if you would have listed at $560 when you first started, you probably could have went under, because the truth is this home at $539 is nicer than the one that sold for $550 and is nicer than the one that sold for $525.
See, isn't that so crazy? But stale listings are a major problem. That is a big mistake that sellers make. You have to avoid overlisting and then doing the hope and pray method. It just it serves nobody. Buyers don't want to go look at it because it's overpriced. You as a seller rack up days on market. It just is, it's bad news all the way around. And I'll be damned if I will be the real estate agent that goes to a listing appointment and says, yeah, let's list your home for 50 grand more than it's worth. I'm doing you a disservice. And so sure, go list with the next agent. But when you go and take it off the market in 6 months or whatever, because it hasn't sold, call me and let's list it and let's do the job, you know?
Yeah, but you're still hurting yourself because people will see as you've kind of chased down the market with these price cuts, you can't now come to market at 550 or whatever that the market is. You have to come below where you were at before because buyers look at that. They're like, oh, this house is 550. Oh, this is great. Then they scroll right down and they look at the history. They all do it. And they're like, wait. Nobody wanted this house for $539 and it sat for months and months and months. I'm not going to be the fool that pays $550 for this. Like, no way.
Exactly.
So, you know, they all do that. So you can't come to market higher. Like, I see that all the time where people come to market higher. Of course it doesn't sell because I'm like, it's all on record now. And so you really like what you choose to do at the beginning matters. And also the price drops matter too. Like, if that was my listing and the person listed it for 600 and they insisted that it must be 600, then I would not chase it down. I'd say, listen, we're getting no showings at 600. Let's drop it to 550. This is where everything needs to be. Because and I would have a conversation with them at the 560 mark of I don't think we should keep lowering this because now we're about at the comp level. I think we should delist it for 30 or 60 days and then come to market during busy season again at 550 because at least then you're not below market. Like if you start lowering below market and then pull your listing off, you cannot come back from that. So be careful when you're also deciding on price cuts because you can't cut up. So like really think through, do you want to keep cutting? And then know if you delist and relist, you need to cut pretty deep. I wouldn't, like, you can't delist and relist and cut $5,000. Like, that's not going to really do anything. You have to be like, all right, we're going to come back to market and we're going to cut 20, 25,000. Like, it's got to be significant. So this person does not feel like a fool who's considering buying your place because they know it's sat at a certain price. So they know.
Exactly. I always use this analogy. You know, it's like if you go to the store and somebody offers 3% off on a shirt or whatever, you're not looking twice. Same thing if you're pricing, you know, you're doing a price reduction on a house and you're doing a 3% price cut. It's not enough to make people stop and think about it. So, you know, a $5,000 price reduction on a $500,000 house ain't crap. You know, and if it needs it, why do it, you know, 5 times or 3 times versus making one more meaningful price reduction? You get a lot more traction and a lot more lookers like, oh, they dropped 15,000. Let's take a look at this one. Maybe we should go and look at it before somebody else does with that big of a price drop, you know?
Yeah. And you have to comp it out, you know, like if you're making that price drop, it's like, okay, now we want to be competitive. So because we should have been in the first place, but we weren't, but now we're going to be. So where do we need to drop it to be competitive? And the market may have changed. It may be lower than what I told you initially. Like maybe initially I told you 550 and now it's 535. That's just what our competition's doing right now. Like you should have done it at the beginning, but now we're doing it now and it's okay. But you know, if we go back to 550, we're still in the same position. But there always is the conversation. You don't have to sell. Like you can rent it, you can live in it, you know, because at some point as a seller, you might be like, you know what? I don't even want to sell this house if I have to sell it for 535. I bought it for 6. I'm already taking this hit. I don't really want to sell it. And it's like, that's okay too. Let's rent it. Like, let's just see what you can get for rent and let's maybe go that direction. And maybe we wait 2 years and then we see how the market is because maybe then we can get 600. Like, we don't know. You know, so there's different strategies too. It's not like if you list with me, like we have to sell it at all cost unless that's just really how you feel.
Yeah. And, you know, at the end of the day, the more that, you know, a listing sells for, the more money's in our pockets. Like we work off commission too. Like we have a vested interest in getting you the most money for your property. So in talking about price reductions and price cuts, it's like we don't want to just cut the price just to sell it and be done. It's like we work off commission too. Yeah. But if you want to reach a sale, then you have to be looking at the market and looking at the data and looking at those specifics and taking all of that into consideration in order for us to get the job done.
Yeah, and looking at the data is not your neighbor George sold his house for $600,000 last year and yours is nicer because that's what I get sometimes, you know. And so and your realtor also, when picking the price, should show you a lot of data. They also shouldn't just say it's worth $550. That's what we should list for because your neighbor Susan sold her house for that. Like there is much more research that needs done, and there should be a full, multiple listings to show what your price should be.
Exactly. And I always say, or I always hear it from sellers. They always say, oh, my neighbor said I should sell it for more. They say I'm selling it way too cheap. And I said, well, where's their checkbook? Have they looked at the property? Invite them over.
Yeah.
Like if they think it's the steal of the century, have them come buy
They
it
should
for
buy
what we
it.
have it listed at. And then they can resell it if they think it's worth so much. And then that, kind of like, okay, well, maybe that's true. They haven't been there. They don't know the issues of it or whatever. So
that's hysterical.
It's an interesting position to be in, but
I'm going to use that. But well, thanks you guys for listening. Make sure to check Tara and I out on our Instagrams. Sherry, if you can put that up. We are happy to help you buy. And even if you're not in our area and you just want some advice, feel free to reach out.
We'd love to visit with you guys. Thanks for watching.